Welcome back to another video where we are about to share the answers and the detailed solutions to weekly coding challenge number 34. So without further ado, let's quickly get into all the solutions we have put together just for you.
Hello everyone, today we're going to understand the question grid of switches. Problem statement states that you are given a 2D grid of switches. Each cell in the grid contains either 0 or 1. You can perform the following operations any number of times. Choose any switch that is on and turn off all the switches that are directly or indirectly connected to it, including itself. Your goal is to turn off all switches using the minimum number of operations. So the first line is two integers n and m, number of rows and columns are given. Next n lines, each line contains m characters with no space. Okay. So output format is a single integer, the minimum number of operations needed to turn off all switches. Now we'll try to understand this question via a test case. So here we have three rows and three columns. Now the question states that we need to find the minimum number of operations to turn off all the switches. But in this case, there is no switch that is currently on. All are off. So our answer will be 0. Let's see another example. In this case, we have four rows and four columns. But in this one, we do have to do some operations to turn off all switches because we do have values that are currently on. This is on, all of these are on, the one that have the value 1. So once we reach this value, we can turn it off. Via this, we can turn it off, and via this only, we can turn this also off. And then via this, we can turn this off. What does this mean? This means that we can turn all of these switches off just using this, directly or indirectly. Similarly, using this, we can turn this switch off and we can also turn this switch off. So our answer will be 1 plus 1, which is equals to 2. So what is the intuition that we are using here? Okay, so any algorithm in which we can operate all items that are connected directly or indirectly to that item is a DFS algorithm. So what we'll do is we'll iterate through the grid and we'll find the value that is 1. If it is 1, we'll check DFS algorithm on it and we consecutively increase the count side by side. If the value is 1, we check DFS on it and increment the count. Now let's just jump to the code. So here is the function. We can first initiate the count. And we return the count. Now we'll write the DFS function for it. Okay. So the first thing will be to change this value to 0, right? We change it to 0. Now, now we want to check whether the value up, down, right or left is 1 or not. If it is 1, only then we'll check the DFS logic on it. So we have the iterators for row and column for it. So we'll do new row is now we'll check the boundary conditions for these. Okay, what we're doing here, we are checking the boundary that this new row and new column does not escape the grid itself. Like if we are here and we check up, then it goes here, and this is not a part of our grid, so we won't check this. So that is what we're doing here. New row, new column. Okay, we'll run it, and it runs successfully. Yeah, this is correct. Thank you. Hello everyone. Today we are going to solve another question on unstruck practice, that is circle of trust. Now the question states that in a company every employee either trusts another employee or doesn't. This trust is one way. For example, if Alice trusts Bob, Bob may or may not trust Alice back. The company wants to identify the group of largest employees such that every person in the group either directly or indirectly trusts everyone else in the group and vice versa. This means the group is a circle of mutual trust where everyone is somehow connected to both directions through the trust chain. You are given n employees numbered from 1 to n, an undirected trust relationship, pairs of employees A to B, meaning A trusts B. Your task is to find the size of the largest such group of mutual trust. The input format is going to be first line two integers n and n, and the next m lines contains two integers a and b, meaning A trusts B. Okay, and we have to return the size of the largest group where mutual trust is reachable among all members. So we'll try to understand this question first via this example. So in this case, we have four employees and two trust relationship. The relationships are 1 trusts 2 and 3 trusts 4. Here is the graph for it, 1 trusts 2 and 3 trusts 4. Now in this graph, we don't have any cycle. So if we don't have any cycle, the strongly connected component of one employee will be 1 itself. So the answer here is going to be 1. Now let's check another test case. This is another case. 5 employees, 5 relationships. 1 trusts 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 1, 4 to 5, and 5 to 4. Here we have the graph for it, and as we see, we have two cycles using these trust relationships. One is from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and back to 1, and one we have 4 to 5, and then 5 to 4. As we see the strongly connected components in this cycle we have three strongly connected components, and in this cycle we have two strongly connected components. Now the maximum of both is 3, so the answer will be 3. So our approach to solve this problem will be identify the cycle in our graph first. Once we have identified the cycle, we just need to count the number of strongly connected components in our cycle. Count the number of strongly connected components in our cycle, and then third is return the maximum of this value. Okay. Now, as you know, it is going to be a little difficult to iterate on these edges when they exist as a pair. So we'll make this in form of an adjacency list, and the adjacency list will look like this. If we have a value where there is no external node pointing to another neighborhood, we'll just use it -1 to map it. Otherwise, we'll use the node value that are going to be mapped to it. And this is what is going to look like. So let's start with the code. This is what our adjacency list is going to look like. Now, after that, we need to find whether a cycle exists in this adjacency list or not. And in order to find a cycle, we use two vectors, path visited, and then we use visited. Vector int visited. and we use path visited. So the role of visited is to check whether that employee has been visited or not. If it has been visited, we mark it as 1, else it is 0. And the role of path visited is to check whether that employee has been visited or not in that respective cycle. If it has been visited in that cycle, we mark it as 1, else we mark it as 0. And at the end, we use answer to store our value. So we'll use DFS to check the graph. Now, if we have a graph, we need to store the elements of that cycle in the graph in a vector, right? Because at the end, we need to count the number of strongly connected components. So we need a data structure to store it. So we'll store it in a vector. And at the end, we have to return answer comma 1. Now you know why 1 is the answer. This is an example when 1 becomes the answer. Here we'll write the DFS code. First thing will be to change the value from 0 to 1 since it has now been visited. And at the end, we also change it back to the original value because now we need to check for other cycles as well, right? So we'll change it back to 0 and remove our elements from the vector. Now, in between, we find the edge of our node. Okay, what are we doing here? So first of all, we found the edge of our current node. For example, if our node is 1, we found 2. Now, if that is not equals to -1, that means that if it is pointing to some employee, then we check if visited is 0 or not. If visited is 0, that means it has not been visited yet. So we apply the DFS to check whether it comes in our cycle or not. Else, if it has been visited, then we check then path visited of edge is 1 or not. If it is 1, that means that it has come in our cycle once before. So then we find the count of our values in the path because this ensures that we have encountered a cycle and now this checks the value in that path. So this is going to work. Let's check, right? Correct. Thank you. Hello everyone. So today we are going to solve another question on answer practice, that is recursive reality collapse. So the problem statement states that in a world governed by recursive dimensions, each reality is a node in a massive network of interconnected timelines. These realities are collapsing one after another, but the collapse of one may trigger or prevent the collapse of others due to hidden dependency rules. Each reality must have a unique ID from 0 to n minus 1. A directed edge from A to B means reality A depends on reality B. A can only collapse if B has already collapsed. However, not all realities must collapse. You are given a list of such dependencies and a list of realities that are initially unstable, meaning they are ready to collapse. Your goal is to compute the maximum number of realities that can collapse following the rules. A reality collapses only if all its dependencies have collapsed. Once a reality collapses, it might trigger a chain reaction allowing dependent realities to collapse. The collapse order must follow the dependency rule strictly. You can choose the order of collapse among eligible realities. Alright. And our input format is NNM, that contains the number of realities and dependency edges. Then we have K, that is the number of initially unstable realities. And then we have K values. And then next M lines contain two integers A and B, meaning reality A depends on reality B. Alright. So in short, this question wants us to find out the total number, maximum number of realities that can be collapsed in total. And the rules include that a node can only be collapsed if first, it has no dependency nodes, and second, all its dependency nodes are already collapsed. So let's try out this example first. This example. Herein we have four dependency nodes. Alright. We have four realities and we have three relationships. Now the number of unstable realities in this case is 1 and that unstable reality is 0. Now the relationship can be illustrated as this. 1 will only collapse if 0 has collapsed. Same 2 will with 1 and 3 with 2. The chain reaction herein becomes 3 is dependent on 2, dependent on 1, dependent on 0. Now if we have 0 and we want to collapse 0, is 0 dependent on anyone over here? No, it's not. So by 1, it has no dependency nodes. 0 will collapse using this point, right? After this, we'll see that 0 will trigger a reaction on 1. Now 1 will see can it collapse or not. How many nodes is 1 dependent on? 1 is only dependent on 0 over here. So 1.2, 1 will also collapse. Now, why will 1 collapse? Because 1 is dependent on 0 and 0 has already collapsed. That means all its dependency nodes are already collapsed. So, due to this point, 1 will also collapse. Similarly, this collapsing of 1 will trigger a reaction on 2 and 2 will also collapse using point number 2. 2 will collapse. Similarly, 3 will also collapse using point 2. So in this way, we can see that all four of these are going to collapse and the answer is going to be 4. Alright, let's check another example. This is this. Now over here, we have 5 realities, 4 relationships, 2 unstable realities, and those 2 realities are 1 and 3. Let's add this separately. And the relationship is going to be this. Now this is how it's going to look like. Alright. So over here, can 1 collapse on its own? Yes, 1 is not dependent on anyone, so 1 will collapse. Can 3 collapse on its own? No, 3 is dependent on 2 and 2 has not collapsed yet, so 3 is not going to collapse as of now, even though it is an unstable reality. But after 1 has collapsed, it will trigger a reaction on 0. Will 0 collapse? Yes, 0 is only dependent on 1 and 1 has already collapsed, so 0 will also collapse. Similarly, 2 will collapse. Now 3 is going to collapse. And then 4 will collapse. So the answer is going to be 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright. So the approach to solve this problem is going to be, first and foremost thing is we need to make an adjacency list to store the edge relationships in reverse order. We need an in degree as well, in degree, to store dependency count, dependency count. Because a node can only collapse if all its dependency has collapsed, not one dependency or two. All the ones that exist have collapsed, only then it is going to collapse. After then, we'll use BFS algorithm to check if we can collapse the node or not. If yes, increment the count. Okay, so we are just going to code it now. First will be to make our adjacency list. Now we need to store the indices, right? So we are going to store it here only. Now we need to store these unstable realities in a more understandable form so that we can use it in a loop in one way, in one iteration. So we can store it in a vector of Boolean, unstable. Now we will make a queue data structure to store this. And at the end, we are going to return this count. Just a second. Oh, here we have to use pushback because we are storing a vector, not just one value. And it's working. Yes, it's correct. All right, this is the answer for this. Thank you.
That's a wrap. We hope the detailed solutions were super helpful for you. And moving forward, in case you're interested in trying the weekly coding challenge, then quickly go in the link given below in the description and apply and register for the challenge, which will happen this Sunday. Every Sunday we have a new weekly coding challenge, so don't forget to register for free and try it out so that you can practice your coding skills. And for many more such resources and updates, stay tuned to Unstop Unhinged. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.